Nikhil Abhishek, how youth stress builds through stacked pressures, constant alertness, and low downtime until setbacks feel decisive. Stacked odds stretch minds the new baseline. In today's world, a student or young professional can do everything right and still feel the body bracing for impact. For many of us, stress no longer arrives as a sharp moment, it settles in the background and stays there. It accumulates, interacts, and amplifies itself until the load feels continuous. There is always another test or meeting to prepare for, a message to reply to, a family expectation to manage, a future to worry about, and a feed that never stops refreshing. While nothing is catastrophic, the pressure behaves like a setting. This is a stress stack. Pressures that would be manageable alone, piling up and feeding off one another. When the stack gets tall enough, the body stays braced even on ordinary days. This can dull enthusiasm, shape choices, and alter even simple routines like sleeping, eating, or showing up for class or work. Psychologist and best-selling author Arti C. Rajaratnam, who has worked closely with adolescents and young adults for over 2 decades, regularly watches this pattern play out across individuals who appear to have very different lives on the outside and yet describe a similar sense of heaviness. She begins by restoring the word stress to its proper scale and drawing a line between pressure that motivates and pressure that corrodes. For any organism to survive, you need what is called eustress, eustress, which is true stress. She says, eustress, eustress, in her explanation, is a workable tension that keeps an organism alert, engaged, and capable of responding to the world. The goal, she emphasizes, should not be a stress free life. Her analogy is disarmingly ordinary. It's like flying a kite. If you just let the manja kite string go, then it's going to fall. If you hold it too tight, it's going to get cut off. In other words, one needs the right tension held at the right level for the right task for the right amount of time. The skill lies in modulating the pull and holding tension without turning it into a choke hold. The trouble starts when the string is pulled from too many directions at once. Academics, career uncertainty, comparison, and home dynamics overlap, then compound. A small hurdle can feel turbulent because the system is already close to its limit. Screens then act like an amplifier. Discomfort is met with instant distraction, so the muscles of self soothing, the ability to settle discomfort from the inside without needing external aid, do not get exercised. Rajaratnam also highlights the imaginary audience effect and the age of reels and live streams where people feel watched even when nobody is watching. Life starts to feel performative and stress can turn into an identity that gets rehearsed online instead of resolved. Once stress becomes background noise, loops form quickly. A young person may start believing that they cannot cope, and the belief can begin to drive behavior in that direction. In psychology, the technical term for that is a self fulfilling prophecy, she explains. Stress often moves in stages from manageable spikes to a phase where the mind feels unsettled even without a clear stressor, before showing up in the body and eventually in disengagement. What stands out, she notes, is how quickly that disengagement can arrive. A few weeks of constant pressure can tip some young people into abrupt shutdown. especially when they feel consuming stress content. Self diagnosing and staying on alert. Recovery is usually the first casualty. In this context, recovery means giving the mind and body real off time, where stress hormones settle and you are not on alert for the next demand. When asked how to reset one's mental state to baseline, Rajaratnam points to good sleep as the most basic tool for the purpose. In simple terms, deep sleep is when the brain does its cleanup and reset work. When that reset keeps getting cut short, the stress response system stays hot for longer, which makes ordinary pressures feel sharper, emotions harder to regulate, and rumination easier to slip into. Finally comes the sense of finality, especially among young adults, where life feels as though it narrows too early and every outcome closes off future possibilities. That high stakes feelings comes from living in a world that treats every grade, interview, or mistake as a verdict, and a culture that rewards doing more than being. There are two states of a human, that the being state and the doing state. Rajaratnam explains if it feels like one's worth comes only from doing, then every result feels decisive. In that climate, small setbacks can feel permanent because they seem to threaten belonging itself. Her reframe is blunt, practical, and brings the focus back to the response. Pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. Understanding the mechanisms of stress matters because it changes where blame lands. Once you can see what is piling up and feeding on itself, the question shifts from what is wrong with me to what am I responding to, and that is where clearer choices begin.